Hello and welcome to Jump To It for IrishRacing.com and Betting Expert. I'm Shane Anderson. We've got a lot to talk about on today's show because we're only days away from one of the great festivals in world racing, Royal Ascot, being upon us. And of course, we've got a lot to look back to from last weekend with so much great racing. That included the Derby, the Oaks, the Coronation Cup, and even the Prix de Jockey Club in Paris. They're all going to be quite significant reference pointers for the remainder of the season. Let's welcome in the team. Stephen Harris and Ed Quigley back with me. Good to see you both. Stephen, I'll start with you. We saw some breathtaking performances at Epsom over the Oaks and the Derby last weekend. Is it real, or was it just all too good from what we saw on the weekend?
Well, the miserable cynic in me, Shane, thinks that things like Snowfall's 16-length win in the Oaks cannot really be true, can it? That ground was very testing. All the others look complete non-stairs. She's either the sort of second coming and is going to win the Arc, getting the allowances, or it's a misleading line of form. And when you've been watching as much racing as I have over the last sort of 30 odd years, you tend to look on the sort of negative rather than the positive. But it was an amazing performance. And in the Derby, of course, we had Adayar, which was a really nice win for Adam Kirby, who's what you would politely call a journeyman jockey, really. But he took the most of the opportunity he was given, and it was a fantastic ride.
Ed, you had, of course, last week off, and we missed you greatly from the show, but you've had a chance now to look back on some of those races, whether it be the Derby, the Oaks, or even the Coronation Cup, which produced a narrow but quite a fascinating contest with only a short half head between a couple of the horses on the line. What did you make of it all last weekend, and did you think that the significant wet weather that we had leading into the Oaks meeting played a big part in the results?
Yes, potentially it did, Shane. I think it absolutely hammered it down, didn't it? And the meeting started on fairly soft ground, it has to be said. And as Stephen says, 16-length winner of the Oaks, the biggest winning margin officially in the history of the race. Snowfall's going to be one of the all-time greats if that's to be taken strictly, isn't it? I get a feeling the winning margin was exaggerated. A couple of the others in behind perhaps didn't perform. The filly I continually say is overrated, Santa Barbara, was unplaced again in another Group 1, so we can forget about her for the rest of the season. But look, the truth is, some of them probably ran below form. She has run the race of her career. The truth is, the true form's probably somewhere in between. And as I see, she's chalked up as around the 5-1 favourite for the Arc now. She will get her allowances, being the 3-year-old and the filly. And yeah, she does look exciting, doesn't she? With regards to the Derby, obviously there was the well-publicised Jockey merry-go-round with Frankie Dettori and Adam Kirby in the build-up with John Leaper and Adayar, etc. And on the day, I don't think there are any excuses, really. I think Adayar was the best horse on the day. Got the dream run up the inside, it has to be said. And again, it's the natural nature of us form pundits and critics always looking at those in behind and trying to make excuses for them. I think fair enough winner on the day, it has to be said. But nonetheless, a few eye catchers, and it was thoroughly entertaining stuff.
It certainly was. Let's take a moment now to reflect on some of these key races, and we'll start with the Derby. An amazing result for Godolphin and Charlie Appleby with the winner of the race, Adayar, who was heavily backed from a big price in on the day, winning for Adam Kirby. They had Hurricane Lane, who ran really well for third in that race, with a 100-to-1 shot Mojo Star in between them. Stephen, give us your assessment of Adayar. How good do you think he could be?
I think he's very much a stayer. The ground was still quite dead. He clocked a good time. There was a lot of talk, Shane, wasn't there, beforehand about stall 1 being a curse and all that nonsense. I seem to remember we did actually dismiss that before the race and were quite bullish about Adayar. He is one of those horses, I think everything panned out ideally for him. He was by far the best horse on the day, but it's probably another race where you have a suspicion that not many of them gave their running. I mean, when you look back at bad-priced favourites, Bolshoi Bally was 5-4 in that race, which after timing it, that really was a bad price, and he was really disappointing without evident excuse on the day, although I believe they found a big cut in his hind leg afterwards, which might explain why he weakened so tamely out of them. The runner-up was 100-1, I think, ran a career best, an absolute very good effort, and Hurricane Lake, as you say, I thought that one had a bit of a rough trip up the middle, probably covered more ground than the winner. He could be one to look out for in something like the St. Ledger if they go up in trip with him. But it was a brilliant performance from Adayar. And once again, we always talk about the late money on Jump To It, Shane, don't we? 50-1 with 5 minutes to go to the off, and ended up 16-1 tight on the exchanges, which is an incredible move on a much liquidity as the Epsom Derby.
Yeah, it was quite extraordinary just to see that wave of money continue to come for him. Ed, when you look at the performance, he's won by almost 5 lengths, and they're talking up now potentially being a King George horse, so that, of course, being the Ascot summer showpiece over 1.5 miles. He may even go on to be a St Ledger horse if they want to stretch him out further in distance, which was the original plan. How have you assessed him? Is he up there as one of the best Derby winners we've seen in recent years?
Hard to tell the second part. Give a cast iron assertion to the second part of your question there, Shane. I think a lot of everything went right for him on the day. I mean, you could actually say that the rains that arrived really helped him. He got the dream run up the inside. I think a couple of others like Bolshoi Ballet cut his leg and weakened out very quickly. John Leaper disappointed. Max Swinney, I don't think the ground was probably deep enough for him and looked a bit of an on-stair. So you can make an excuse for a few of the others in behind. But look, he's clearly a very good horse. He's going to go to the King George. But I do think soft ground probably suits. And there's been a bit of a curse, hasn't there, on Derby winners recently. They've kind of won the Derby and they've gone missing for the rest of their career. I don't want to say that with him, but a kind of gut feeling tells me we could see that again. The horse I want to take out of it is Hurricane Lane, who I thought... when we saw him win at York, he looked pretty raw and unfurnished, but he galloped. All he did was gallop up the straight in the Knave's Mire, and he looked totally all at sea at Epsom. I often take the view that too much is made of horses running at Epsom. Oh, will they handle the track or will they get unbalanced? I think 9 out of 10 horses do handle Epsom, but I generally think Hurricane Lane was the 1 in 10 who didn't. I mean, William Buick had to ride him after 2 furlongs to hold his position. On the camber up the home straight, he was drifting right. As they came into the home straight, he nearly ran into the car park. He just looks a big brute of a thing who wants a flat galloping track, which is why I think York really suited him. And I agree with Stephen, going further forward, as he's 12-1 for the St Ledger. I wouldn't be at all surprised if he ended up in that contest. Town Moor, obviously, pretty much the longest home straight at Doncaster in the whole of the racing world. You just wind him up, he turns into a home straight, and he'll just gallop. And I think pedigree offers plenty of hope that he'd see out that trip. So Hurricane Lane, the one for me to take out of the race. Adayar, fair winner on the day. Just slight suspicion whether he can back that up, especially if we hit real quick ground in the summer.
Let's move on to the Oaks and talk about Snowfall. A 16-length win, a big result for Aidan O'Brien, Coolmore and the Balliol training operation. And great to see Frankie Dettori with another classic success, this time partnering up with Coolmore, which for many years, Stephen, have long been his great rivals when he was associated with Godolphin. So on face value, record-breaking winning margin success, time looks strong. How can there be such rapid improvement from what we saw at 2 to 3? It makes you scratch your head a little bit.
Well, I must admit that having got the Derby half right, although John Leaper was disappointing, but we did give a positive mention to Adayar. I got the Oaks completely wrong. I mean, I laid Snowfall a place at around about 5 to 2, which was a cheaper option than laying 8 to 1 winning. I thought she was very flattered at York, gifted the run of the race, and I thought the ones in behind would reverse the form. Well, that was completely wrong. I mean, what is amazing with Snowfall is that she had quite a few runs as a juvenile and began to look exposed. And when she reappeared at York, Shane, she was sent off 14 to 1. Well, Aidan O'Brien does not have 14 to 1 winners when he comes over here. Usually, if they're sent off double figures, they're beating the ambulance home out the back because they are the shrewdest outfit going. They know exactly where they stand with their horses. And the market is an incredibly good guide to them. That being said, there was obviously no fluke about York, despite what I certainly thought. Was there a fluke about this 16-length win? I mean, when you watch it back, I mean, it was like she joined in the race 3 furlongs out. They were all absolute unconscious. It was like a Foss/Lass novice hurdle with them all unable to put one leg in front of the other. I am quite cynical about what that amounts to. And they went 8 to 1 after the race for the Arc, and I can see why people thought, well, hang on a minute, this is just won by 16 lengths. But if you look at all her other pieces of form, she's now a very bad price for the Arc, in truth, and it's a totally different race. I do have a suspicion that this has got an element of fluke about it, and Ed just touched on a point about the ground. We're not going to get soft, and it was properly soft ground because of the heavy rain and the overwatering, which is another issue that had taken place in the week before Friday. So whether she's going to get those conditions again this summer is extremely doubtful. So probably I'd be against her next time. She's likely to be underpriced.
It's interesting, Ed, when you think about wide margin successes. Last year, Aidan O'Brien had Love win the Oaks by 9 lengths. She came out and proved herself a legitimate Group 1 star with some of her other runs, although minimal racecourse appearances over the remainder of the season. So we can see demolition jobs often in a race like this when it's own age sex events, but also when there's been significant weather patterns come in the period leading into the race. I think that's possibly something we'll need to really work hard to try and determine how much better was she realistically over her rivals versus how she was able to take advantage of that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I've touched upon it at the top of the show. I think that the truth is her true form is probably, I think a lot of them underperformed, and I think she ran the absolute storm on conditions which really suited her. She's run the race of her life, and her true form is probably somewhere in between. I think she's clearly the best filly on the day. Amazing, really. As I say, she looked like a washed-up, exposed, also ran as a 2-year-old, to put it blunt. You would not have been sitting there when she finished her 2-year-old campaign going, do you know what? This filly's going to win the Oaks by the biggest ever winning margin in 6 months' time. But she's gone up in trip, which her pedigree does align to, in fairness, and she really has taken off. Again, was a little element of fluke about it. I do take the race with a little bit of a pinch of salt. I think she's clearly a high-class filly. She is still unexposed over middle distances. Whether she could back that up on faster ground, no one really knows, I suppose, is the great imponderable racing, why it makes it exciting. But even on faster ground, she would have won that race. Whether she won it in such spectacular fashion, that's probably the salient point there. But best filly on the day, no doubt.
Only 2 races before the Oaks, we had a small field contest the Coronation Cup, and it was a victory to Pyledriver, a horse who I love, but I can never get right from a betting perspective. Every time I bet against him, he wins, and when I'm on him, he gets rolled. But he was able to hold off the short price favourite Alazi. What I thought, Stephen, was interesting here, small field, but they pretty much kept down to the inside rail, the traditional rail course home, versus what we saw in the Oaks when they all came to the stand side. Do you think that the track had changed dramatically in such a relatively short period of time? Did they overdo it in the Oaks? How do you assess the way that the track played on Oaks Day?
Yeah, it was 2 very different races, weren't they? I thought Martin Toa was brilliant on Pyledriver, and actually you saying that about catching horses right, I do agree with you about Pyledriver. I had a really good bet on him first time out, and he ran well. He didn't settle particularly well and got a bit tired in the last 100 yards. I thought he'd probably win at the furlong pole on his seasonal debut. I wasn't sure he was the class potentially of Alazi. I suppose after he's won, he did look a big price at double figures. From a betting point of view, Shane, Alazi traded at 1.01 in running on the exchanges, which is quite amazing, really. It just shows how Crowley came wide on the favourite and looked sure to sweep past. But that camber at Epsom, where they roll back down into the running rail, it can be very deceptive for in-running punters in particular. And Alazi, I suspect on a flat galloping track like Newbury or maybe somewhere like Ascot looking ahead, Alazi might be better class than Pyledriver. I think Pyledriver got the best tactical ride and rallied very gamely. I think if you had a match bet in terms of what I actually think of their potential on a flat track, I think Alazi would be sort of 5 on to beat Pyledriver, but there's no denying. And William Muir and Chris Grassick, another one of these people who've come together, teamed up as a partnership this season, seems to be the fashionable thing this flat season. They're going really great guns, and he's got some nice young horses as well. So it was good to see a victory for the smaller stables, if you like.
Hey, good to see the English following the Australian lead by having training partnerships. Certainly makes it easier for a lot of the stables. It's something that's been in operation back in Australia for quite some time. What did you make of the performance of Pyledriver, Ed? Narrow victory, but are you very much in Stephen's camp where Alazi is probably the one, Alazi is probably the one that you'd like to stick with if they met again?
Yeah, interesting, Shay. Very interesting. Pyledriver is really tough, really resolute, and there were a few nasty names on social media thrown at Alazi on the back of that effort. And it's interesting to listen to William Haggis, though. He reigns at the top level. They might need to come down to 10 furlongs with him. So he does travel so well. And I think Jim Crowley was insinuating perhaps his stamina they really tested his stamina and petrol gauge over a mile and a half. And Pyledriver wouldn't go away, it has to be said. And I mean, half of you thought he didn't quite go through with the effort, and part of you maybe he just didn't excel in that final furlong where you really needed to stay and kick on. And so it sounds like they've kind of mooted the Eclipse as a potential run next time out, come back to a stiff 10 furlongs. And I could kind of see the logic in that. If they go hell for leather up front, he's a very strong traveller. and I wouldn't totally give up with him yet. But questions about him right at the top level have to be answered, I suppose. As for Pyledriver, it sounds like they're going to the King George. Well, they'll meet the Derby winner, Adayar, obviously, which would be an intriguing encounter. And it was great for Martin Dwyer as well, wasn't it? 45. And we're talking about you don't win anything with kids. Well, we've had Jim Bolger, Kevin Manning, Frankie Dettori, and 45-year-old Martin Dwyer, of course, winning the Derby on Sir Percy back in 2006 and still knocking in Group 1 winners now. So, yeah, it was a wonderful performance, as Stephen says, for one of the smaller stables in the world of flat racing.
Before we move on to talk about the Prix Jockey Club, I just want to ask you both about two horses that ran in the Coronation Cup, because they will be progressing to some of the other big races throughout the season. That is Japan and Mogul. To my eye, Ed, both flatly disappointing. Is Aidan O'Brien in a bit of trouble with these two?
Absolutely. Just two overrated waste of times, I think, to be honest with you. I've got them on the list with Wembley, the other horse, which gets backed as if it's the new Shergar and races the ambulance every time. He's a load of dross. Japan, he's exposed. It looks like he doesn't enjoy it. Mogul, they seem to find a new excuse every time for him, don't they, really? He looks out of love with the game, to be honest with you. So waste very little time on them and be very shocked if they're winning at the top level. I mean, they could go and find some Zimbabwean Group 1 to go and win, fair play. But I don't see them really troubling or dining at the top table this season, shall we say.
You with Ed there, Stephen?
Well, actually, I was just thinking, Shane, that those of us an older generation like ourselves remember horses like Isterbrack that Aidan O'Brien used to send over when at hurdling. He was multiple champion hurdle winner. I'd love to see these old dogs like Mogul. I mean, Japan perhaps isn't ungenuine. That might be a bit unkind. But Mogul definitely has got a time form squiggle, surely, by now. They'd be top-class hurdlers. I don't know why they don't try it. They're going to be running now they'll probably have to go down to sort of Group 2, Group 3 to get wins out of them. If I was them, I'd pop them over a few flights of hurdles, maybe send them to Joseph. You could have a champion hurdler on your hands. They've still got so much class. They're bound to stay 2 miles on decent-ish ground. It's a shame they don't go down that route more. It certainly adds to the colour of the game.
I think a big problem could be the fact that Mogul costs 3.4 million guineas as a yearling, and they don't want to go down that path. Anyway, good luck to them. I hope they can bounce back, but certainly Ed and Stephen don't agree with me there. Quick touch point on the Prix du Jockey Club, because this was a really good result for Coolmore and Aidan O'Brien, with St Mark's Basilica scoring a runaway victory. I think, Stephen, he had the barrier draw that he could take advantage of, where he stalked the speed. The gap came for him at the top of the straight, but he showed electrifying acceleration to really put that race to bed.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Shen. And I also think he'll be much just as effective, if not more so, on really fast ground in the summer, because he's a traveller with a turn of foot. The response when he was asked was really impressive. I mean, I think he's the sort of one, whereas horses like Adayar and maybe Snowfall, we might have seen their very best effort at Epsom in June. I suspect with horses like St Mark's Basilica, you could enjoy a very profitable few months following him on faster ground.
What about you, Ed?
Yeah, I mean, all the talk's been obviously Santa Barbara's and your Bolshoi Ballets of this world, and St Mark's Basilica has almost come a little bit forgotten, but I was really impressed by the manner in which he won. Yes, he got a bit of a dream run at the inside, but it was push-button acceleration. Really, again, fascinating listening to what Connections was saying. They knew he's a miler. Would he get an extended 10 furlongs? He got that fine. Now, I mean, what do you do with him next? It's really interesting. He's clearly versatile in regards to trip. I mean, the arc is another, 298 yards on top of that? Maybe they'll think about that as an end-of-season campaign. My gut feeling tells me he's just got so much speed, natural speed. Something, again, like the Eclipse would really suit him. Like 10 furlongs. He's a really, really progressive horse who seems to, let's say, almost been a little bit forgotten on these shores with all the so-called hype merchants out of the Ballydoyle team. But look, he's doing it. He's back-to-back contests in really smart fashion now. And he has to do on quicker ground, but his action suggests he will. And really, really exciting horse. Fascinating to see what trip ultimately they campaign him over going forward.
Before we move on, there's one horse from that race I think will come out and win a Group 1 either this year or next. He ran 5th. His name is Cheshire Academy. It was an outstanding run, coming from near last to finish 5th. He was doing his best work right at the end. I think if he drew a barrier much closer to the inside, he would have probably run right in the placings and maybe stretched the winner. Anyway, that's a look at the Prix du Jockey Club. Let's have a look at the upcoming races. And one of the great weeks of racing is on our doorstep. Next week, we've got Royal Ascot, 5 days of fabulous contests coming in arguably the most prestigious way. Stephen, and what I love this year is there's been a shift. We've gone from the traditional 6 races a day now to 7 races, so more betting options. And I think importantly, we might just have perfect conditions for all 5 days of the Royal Meeting.
Yeah, the forecast is excellent. It's going to be 25 degrees and sunny. They're bound to be warm, imagine it. It's already good to firm, good in places. Ascot is actually a track they don't actually tend to ruin, Shane. They let it be fast ground, and you get much better racing as a result of that, in my opinion. As you say, 5 days. We've got 7 races each day, so there's 35 races for punters to study. 6 two-year-old races now, which personally is an old misery. I think that's ridiculous, because what you end up doing is you dilute it. They all avoid each other, and they cherry pick, and you get less competitive racing as a result. When there used to be much less 2-year-old races and less choice for the trainers, it was better. But still, it's a fantastic spectacle. You've just got to stay. It's a dangerous time for punters, Shane. I'd say that to Jump to It listeners. You can get sucked into playing in every race because the quality's so high. You've got to pick your punches, be patient, play in the morning, and most importantly of all, try and find those extra places. Lots of bookmakers will offer 5, 6, 7 or even 8 places on the big handicaps, and that's where there's some terrific value to be had.
I feel like you've just called me out there. I love playing in every race of Royal Ascot throughout the week. I'm notorious for trying to find something all the way through. Just on the way the track should play, Ed, when we talk about Ascot, it is a track which, despite in all sense and purposes, is a big course. I mean, the home straight's the best part of, once they come off the round course, 3 furlongs in length. You've got a lovely long straight course up to a mile. But quite often, it's a course that will suit those that can be bang on speed.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I've spent years trying to work out all the cast iron theories and assertions, and to be honest with you, so much of it can go out the window, especially with the dreaded unknown draw bias, haven't you, where some races you get drawn in the car park, you might as well not run. And I hate those kind of handicaps, especially from an Antepost perspective, because you could have done your money before you start. Though that dreaded comment in the analysis after, where first of group of 16 on far side, if you finish 10th, it's absolute, it drives you mad. But yeah, look, those kind of races I will probably play late. I agree with Stephen that, I mean, the 2-year races are incredibly hard and competitive. As an overall rule, from a betting perspective, I tend to concentrate on the group races where I think there's a vulnerable favourite. If I think we can get the favourite turned over, then I will plough into something which I perceive as value. But it's incredibly. Whereas we're very quickly like Cheltenham, everything seems to be mapped out for months in advance. Here at Ascot, it all seems very last minute. You've got horses entered in 4 or 5 handicaps, and it just seems very tricky to solve on the day, let alone even a week in advance. So I'll be playing my cards late with a lot of the handicaps, but a few of the group races I'm starting to get some firm opinions on, and I'm really looking forward to it now.
Well, we're going to spend a fair bit of time now talking about the Group 1 races throughout the course of the week. And I should remind our audience that we will be live streaming Jump to It at 8 a.m. Each day of Royal Ascot. So it'll be Stephen, Ed, also Vincent Finnegan coming from irishracing.com and myself, and hopefully we'll find plenty of winners. All right, we start with 3 Group 1 races on day 1 of the Royal Meeting. And this, of course, is the 1,600 metre, the Queen Anne Stakes, or a mile, as many would say. And we've got a fantastic lineup here headed by Palace Pier for John and Thady Gosden, Frankie Dettori to take the ride. Bet365 have got him clearly as market leader, but the best price with them at the moment is 9-4 on. Order of Australia is currently at 6-1 for Aidan O'Brien and Coolmore, courtesy of William Hill. Lope Air Fernandez at 10-1. Tilsit's at 16-1. Next best, you're getting Top Rank at 20-1 with Sky Bet. Stephen, I think based on what we've seen from Palace Pier so far this season, he's come back in magnificent order. His overall record, he's only tasted defeat once and he had issues on that occasion. Is he the standout bet for the week?
I think he's going to scare off a lot of the opposition, Shane. He's 9-4 on at the moment, I think, for the Queen Anne, the first race on the opening day. He's won 7 of his 8 career races, 780 odd grand's worth of prize money. I know when he reappeared at Sandown, they thought he was about 80% fit. They hadn't done a lot with him. He pulverised them. And then in the Lockinge, that was one of the most remarkable performances of the season so far. Dettori made up 6 lengths to hit the front over 2 out and was sort of looking round, and he had them all absolutely stone cold. And he then went again when Lady Bowthorpe came out the pack to challenge. I mean, what that bare form's worth. I'm not sure what he's beaten so far this season. I mean, they're not top-class horses, but he's done it in the manner of a top-class horse. They always thought he wants fast summer ground. He's going to get it at Ascot. Dettori will be on. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up being about 3 on, and there's about 5 others take him on, because they've all got other races they can run in, Shane. So if they don't think they can win, they might as well go for something they can. I think this might end in a small field and a very, very short price favourite.
It's fascinating, Ed. When you look at his market rival is Order of Australia, who won the Mile Breeders' Cup race, but he was a 40-1 outsider on that occasion. He was tried as a 1.5-mile horse earlier last season. If you just go on pure form records, he does look, Palace Pier, to be so far ahead of his rivals in the category. But if you want to try and find a fault, the only time he's been beaten was down the straight mile course at Ascot last year on British Champions Day. Can you use that as an excuse?
You could, to an extent. However, very different ground conditions would be the key point. That was always their nervousness. It was very soft on that occasion. He's going to get his summer ground here. He's got £5 on official figures in hand of Order Australia. He's going to have £10 and upwards on most of the rest of the field. I totally agree with everything Stephen says. I think he goes off 3s on in a 6-runner race and he just wins. Exciting horse to look at. But not anything from a kind of betting perspective. If I can't find something better than a 3s on shot for the week, then I need to take up croquet or something. So, look, he's the class horse. He should win on all known form, and I expect him to get the job done with authority.
Second of the Group 1s on day one is the King's Stand Stakes over 5 furlongs. Batash, who's trying to win the race, I think, for the third time, currently at 15-8, market leader with Sky Bet. And possibly at that price on his best form, it could be a touch of overs. Winter Powers at 5-1 with William Hill. Liberty Beach at 8-1 also with William Hill. Best price for Oxtead's at 8-1 with Ladbrokes. And Extravagant Kids given a chance at 11-1 currently with Coral. Stephen, what are you doing with the King's Stand Stakes? Are you sticking with the old boy Batash or are you going wide?
Well, we've not seen Batash since August, so he's going to have been off for 10 months or so before he reappears. The market will be critical with him. He's won 13 of his 23 starts, £1.5 million in prize money. He's an explosive sprinter. When he's on his A game, he's virtually unbeatable. He's probably the best by some distance, but he does have the tendency to boil over. He's not been the easiest to train. He has bombed out altogether once or twice, although usually when soft ground's been against him. He's one of those horses, Shane. He could be 5-4 popping on if they've got him 100%, or the market could be weak. They might think he might need the run, or he's not at his best. Very hard to gauge at this stage. The one I think's interesting and possibly overpriced is Oxtead, who Roger Fell is an extremely good trainer, does very well with limited resources. And I know that a lot of his horses have been needing the run this season. He doesn't feel like they've been right, but they've started to have winners in the last couple of weeks. This one they sent over to Riyadh. Maybe it left a mark. He came back. He's been beaten a well-back favourite twice so far this season, but I do like his run at York last time. I think that's strong form behind Starman. We're going to come on to Starman in a minute for the Diamond Jubilees, one of my best bets of the week. But I think that Oxtead might be one of those horses who needs a run or two, needs fast ground, and should be peaking for Ascot. If he's 8-1, I think he's going to be a cracking each-way bet.
Ed, with Batash as the market leader, we know he's now a 7-year-old coming back for yet another season. We know he's not going to improve based on what we've seen previously. It's just very rarely would happen that a horse so late in its career will get better. But does he have a significant margin over his rivals that even his not appearing anywhere near his best will still have him as the horse to beat?
He does on official figures, doesn't he, Shane? However, it's just that kind of the worried absence. He's had a couple of niggles, and I spoke beforehand about I'm looking for races, the group races, where I think there's potentially a dodgy favourite, and I'd have to put him in this category purely because we haven't seen him for 10 months. That would just be my concern. He has had a little bit of a history getting worked up beforehand. The problem is, what do you want to take him on with? That's probably the flip side of the argument. You've got Winter Power who's going to come into this on the back of a listed race. I'll take Stephen's points of Oxtead, but the horse is starting to become the ultimate excuse merchant. You know, was beaten 8-13, needed the run. Was beaten last time at York. Oh, the ground was too soft. Didn't enjoy the travel over to Saudi Arabia. For whatever reason, just seems to have got a little bit of miss. I think Ryan Moore's potentially in line to ride one of the American Raiders here, Extravagant Kid, whose all his best form comes on 5 furlongs, 6 furlongs on lightning quick ground. I wouldn't pretend to be the best American form judge out there, it has to be said. But I do think that it's an interesting jockey booking. The horse is double figures. It should get his condition. So all in all, I may just end up laying Batash on the fact that I think if the horse isn't right, something else will win it and he'll bomb out. But it's an intriguing race nonetheless. And I hate to try to be a doom-monger, but it does look a little bit below par in terms of the entries on what we've seen of previous renewals. You've got some Group 3/listed runners in here trading it, pushing on single-figure odds. So, it's interesting nonetheless. And the race just all revolves. Is Batash still Batash? And I suppose that old cliche is we won't know until afterwards.
Make a good case, though, when referencing an American horse contesting the race. We have seen over the years American sprinters and Australian sprinters proving very, very hard to beat in these big sprint races at Royal Ascot. So we'll watch with interest there. We move on to the third of the Group 1s, and this is for the 3-year-olds, the St James's Palace Stakes. Interestingly, this is on the round course, whereas the Queen Anne is down the straight mile course. We've got Poetic Flair as the favourite, 4-1 with 888. Mosta Darf at 9-2, also with 888. Highland Avenue, you're getting 6-1 with Bet365. Lucky Vega's best price, 7-1 with Paddy Power. And Battleground, another Aidan O'Brien 3-year-old, 8-1 with Ladbrokes for the St James's Palace Stakes. I'm finding this a bit of a raffle, Stephen. What are you making of it?
Yeah, it looks at least 5-1 the field if they all turn up. Not much between them on form. I thought Lucky Vega was the one who's slightly overpriced, 7 or 8-1. Has run twice so far in both the 2,000 guineas at Newmarket and the Curragh. On both occasions has run really well. Last time sent off 7-2 favourite, left with a bit of ground to make up, running on strongly. Perhaps the soft ground there not ideal. Back on faster ground, should go really close. I think he's arguably the form pick, and there should still be a little bit of improvement to come after 7 career runs.
Ed, when you look at a horse like Mostadaf, who's coming through for John and Tatey Gosden, similar profile in a way to what we saw with Palace Pier last year, come through some lower ranked races, get to the St James's Palace Stakes and put his rivals to the sword. Do you think you could see a similar result for him? He certainly had a fair bit of support early.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, it was a battling success, wasn't it, in the Heron Stakes? He did it pretty nicely. That was on very soft ground again. They're going to get different conditions here. But, I mean, the one I've got massively circled, and I flagged him up for, is Battleground for Aidan O'Brien. If you rewind 12 months ago, this horse absolutely slooshed home in the Chesham Stakes, looked a superstar, I thought, in the making. That was on very soft ground. Then went to Goodwood, won the Vintage Stakes on pretty quick ground on that occasion. Now, was absolutely smashed in the 2,000 guineas betting, as if, they're expecting Henry the Navigator, but he ran like he had broken sat-nav. I mean, he was absolutely woeful in the 2,000 guineas. That's the only bad run he's ever put in. Connections afterwards said he just hated the track. Perhaps ground was a little bit too lively. He then was due to run in the Irish 2,000. They pulled him out because the ground was too deep. So I don't know what's going on here, what actual ground he does want. It's probably somewhere in between. But the manner, the volume of money which came for that horse in the 2,000 guineas, I think he was available 12-1 on the morning, went off 9-2 favourite. That suggests to me they were expecting a huge run from him at Newmarket that day, and it didn't materialise. I wouldn't be at all surprised, back at his happy hunting ground, back at the scene of, you could argue, his most impressive performance to date, whether he really came to life. Again, ground could be a little bit on the questionable side, but they will water it sufficiently that it's not absolutely rattling. But Battleground, definitely for me, I'm convinced we're there's a lot more to come from him on a more conventional track, shall we say.
All right, that's the assessment of the 3 Group 1 races on day 1, which is Tuesday, June 15. Day 2, the Wednesday, the 16th of June, and we've got one Group 1 race, and that, of course, is the 10 furlong showpiece, the Prince of Wales Stakes, won by many an outstanding horse over the years. 2 horses at the top of the market. Lord North, 9-4 with William Hill, who was impressive, winning the only time we've seen him so far this season. Love, the champion filly of last season, back now as a 4-year-old. She's 9-4 with Sky Bet. Of course, she missed the Tattersalls Club Cup a couple of weeks ago. Armory's at 7-2 with Bets 365. Adayar, the Globetrotter, of course, a Group 1 winner in Australia at his most recent outing, currently 10-1 with Bet 365. And Japan, who may back up after the disappointing performance in the Coronation Cup, is currently 12-1 with William Hill. I find this a really interesting betting market so far, Stephen, because with the expectations around Love and how good she could be, getting 9-4 for her, I think on raw ability, she might have a bit of a margin over some of her rivals here, but you're taking the risk she's coming to the race first up.
Yeah, it's very hard to compare the form here, Shane. I think Love was so impressive last season. She won the 1,000 guineas impressively. Her win in the Oaks was brilliant. She quick and clear. She looked absolutely top class there, coming home alone. And then on her last run at York, she didn't come off the bridle to beat Inferior. So she did nothing wrong. I do think they missed an engagement with her, didn't they, a week or so ago. So whether things have been 100% straightforward or whether they've just targeted Ascot where they know she's going to get fast ground that's fine. She's a fascinating runner. Lord North, of course, the current favourite, or just about favourite, won this last year, came from last to first, despite pulling quite hard, quickened up well. This looks a stronger renewal this time around. It's a fascinating race. We always talk about the market with Aidan O'Brien's. Love is a classic Coolmore market horse. Is she going to be sort of 2-1, 15-8? The heavy mob want to be on. She's 100% fully fit. This is her day. Or is she going to be, she's had a few problems, some niggles. We haven't seen her for a long time. Will she be a weak sort of 9-2, 4-1 chance? So it's very hard to say, but the market will be fascinating for this race.
What are you doing with it, Ed?
Yeah, echo a lot of what Stephen says. I find this a real head scratcher, to be honest with you. Love, I believe they pulled out on account of the ground being too deep last time out, and they didn't want to run a first time out, and that they thought that'd leave a mark on her for the season. Again, it's a little bit of the Batash syndrome in the sense that if you had a real tuned up, fully fit Love arriving here with a run under her belt, then I'd be all over her to win this. It's just that question mark about, are there going to be other days? This is over 10 furlongs as well, possibly a mile and a half might suit. Lord North did it well enough last year. Again, slight worry for me. Actually bolted up at Maydown last time out, had a big journey back, and bold accounts burst a blood vessel in winning that as well. So again, this is never a race where there's question marks about a few of the favourites in here. The problem is, Shane, the ones at bigger prices I've already slagged off on this show. Japan, Mogul, Brew, all the ones that should be in a novice hurdle at Cheltenham's October meeting. So, I don't know. I really don't know. I suppose Armory, obviously being the Aidan O'Brien representative around the 7-2 mark, did things well enough at Chester last time out. Looked an improved horse, travelled nicely, quick and clear from Sangarius, who we'll probably meet again here. It'd be interesting if he runs as well. He's probably the one with the least question marks about him at the moment, yet his top level ability, it does fall somewhere between the other two. So in answer to your question, I find this really, really trappy encounter, and the market will be a huge guide on the morning.
Okay, let's move on now to day 3 and the Gold Cup over 4,000 metres or 2.5 miles is the big one, and Stradivarius is trying to equal Yates by winning the race for the 4th time in succession. He's an even money favourite with William Hill, Subjectivist at 13-2 with the same firm, Trushans at 8-1 with Paddy Power, Spanish Missions at 10-1 also with Paddy Power, and Search for a Song at 14-1 with William Hill. Stradivarius has dominated this race over the past few years, Stephen, including last year with that massive margin success. Are you sticking with him at even money?
He's 17 wins from 27, 2.6 million quid in prize money. He's the sort of horse could make you love flat racing over jump racing, to be honest. They've campaigned him so well. I know when he won last year, they were very worried about soft ground. They've always said, try and avoid soft ground. He's such a good moving horse with a turn of foot. Well, he looked like he desperately wanted soft ground the way he won last year. The one thing about his reappearance, he was quite an uneasy favourite. He was sent off 7-4 on, but he looked like being a lot shorter than that. He won well enough, but the two horses he beat, Ocean Road and Naef, have both come out at Naef Road. Sorry, Ocean Wind and Naef Road have both come out and been very, very poor next time. So strictly from a recent form point of view, that would be a negative at the price. But obviously he's got it all in the book. At some point, Shane, as you know, age catches up with all of us, but Stradivarius shows no signs of that at the moment. He keeps coming back for more. Is he the sort of horse I want to back at even money? Probably not, in truth.
As long as I've got some shoe polish to hide the greys in my hair, Stephen, age will not slow me down. Ed, let's get your assessment of the Gold Cup, Stradivarius. Look, on pure form, even money to me looks a very good bet, and I think he will probably start significantly shorter unless something dramatic happens over the next few days. Do you see it similarly?
Yes, I do. Yeah, the race naturally will cut up, won't it, to be a single-figure field. He most likely winner, blah, blah, blah. We know that. However, the horse I've tipped for this, backed for this, and I'm sticking with as an each-way perspective is an Aidan O'Brien horse, Santiago. Of course, won last year's Irish Derby. He was a Queen's Vase winner at Royal Ascot. All this horse does is gallop. He's an out-and-out stayer. Really think we could see more improvement from him when he goes up to this 2.5 mile trip. He got within 2 lengths of Stradivarius at Goodwood last year, don't forget. I just think he's just ready for a proper test of stamina. I think Stradivarius will win. I think Santiago can follow him home. That's my kind of assessment at the moment.
Okay, let's move on now to the next of the Group 1s, and this is the Commonwealth Cup over 6 furlongs, 1,200 metres on Friday. a new addition, or fairly new addition to the Royal Ascot meetings, only been run over the past few years. And the American filly Campanelle is the favourite 5-1 with William Hill. Suesa at 11-2, Bet365. Dragon Symbols at 10-1. Supremacy's at 10-1. Diligent Harry at 12-1, the next in the market. What are you doing here, Stephen?
Not got a strong opinion here. I think Campanelle's by far the most interesting runner if her temperament holds. I know Wesley Ward's got a brilliant record at Ascot. She won the Queen Mary at this meeting last year. She did have to be pony to post, but that's usual for his horses. They usually do that to keep them from boiling over. They're usually on their toes. She ran a blinder in the Breeders' Cup. Fascinating. Again, a market horse. We've not seen much for this. We haven't seen anything of her in the last 8 months or so. She's bound to be primed. She's over here already. Dettori will be booked. She's going to be a very popular horse for sure. Not a race I've got a strong betting opinion on.
All right. So what are you doing, Ed?
Well, yeah, I'm on an absolute Hail Mary in this one at 50-1. The Learjet, a horse I know has been in your tracker for some time, Shane. I think it's a huge price, given the basis he showed brazen speed when winning the Norfolk Stakes at Royal Ascot last year over the 5 furlongs. They've tried to stretch his stamina out, didn't they? Took him over to America over a mile. That didn't work. They ran him at Newbury on his comeback over 7. Again, I thought the old petrol light was coming on in the closing stage. Now, they went to go to France for the French 2,000 guineas. The horse apparently had some blood irregularity, didn't run. That's the old incident where Kieran Fallon Jr. stuck in the hotel room being quarantined and couldn't get back. They then, a kind of a last-minute choice, decided to reroute him, get him back here and run him at Haydock over 6 on an absolute bog. I mean, remember that ground a couple of weeks ago? It was like Betfair Chase weather in November. He came home last. I'm not worried about that at all, purely for the fact I think that would just got the run into him. It would have blown the cobwebs away. If he had a couple of issues with his blood sample, whatever, he could leave that behind him. He's 50-1. He's a previous Royal Ascot winner. They've squashed all thoughts about 7 furlongs and a mile. They said they're going to stick to sprinting trips with him. If you can get some quick ground, 50-1, I do think it's a huge price for a previous Royal Ascot winner at his right trip.
Yeah, you touch a very good point, I think, and you often see horses that have won races or run really well in some of these big races at Royal Ascot keep coming back year in, year out and performing quite admirably. So at $51 for the Learjet, he just could be a really good each-way chance. The other Group 1 race on the Friday is the Coronation Stakes over the round course, the mile. And Mother Earth, winner of the 1,000 guineas, is the favourite at 7-2 with Ladbrokes. Primo Baccio at 11-2, pretty gorgeous at 6. Then we get out to Joan of Arc and Potapova, both at the 10-1 quote. Mother Earth, of course, after winning at Newmarket, Stephen went to Paris, and she was narrowly touched off in the French 1,000 guineas. Do you think she can come out on top again?
Yeah, I think that's the key form line, Shane, the guineas at Newmarket. The one I like here, I think, is a bit of a forgotten horse, Saffron Beach, who ran in the Oaks the other day. Hopefully she's okay to run because she didn't stay a mile 4, full stop, end of sentence. So forget that run completely. I thought she had no chance of staying before the race. She's got plenty of speed. She wants decent ground. She's the same horse as Mother Earth on their guineas running. Arguably, she was on the wrong part of the track as it turned out, and Mother Earth was over on the far side, and Saffron Beach had to come up this side. So I thought she ran an absolute blinder. She's going to be 12, 14, 16-1, back at a mile, back on fast ground. Brilliant small yard, going really well. I think she's a really good each-way alternative to the front of the market.
All right, Saffron Beach at the each-way from Stephen. Ed, are you with the favourite or are you going wide?
No, I think this is wide open again. I think it's all seemed a little bit much of a muchness in behind, as we said. Yeah, the favourite, look, she's done it well enough so far. What we've seen, Newmarket performance was good, but again, we touched upon it on the show a few weeks back. I'm not totally convinced by the form of that race. There's one in here which I've got highlighted. I don't know if she's going to run or not, but it's Potapova for Cheveley Park, Sir Michael Stout. It's around the 11-12-1 mark. Winning at Chelmsford and then Redcar wouldn't be the most conventional route into this race. However, she's not had to come off the bridle to win both races. Now, Sir Michael Stout traditionally doesn't like the tilted windmills. He gives his fillies a lot of time and they progress through the years. But she won 7 Lakes hard held at Chelmsford. She went to Redcar. I think she was 5s on. Absolutely stuffed the field up. Danny Tudhope said he couldn't quite believe it, how good she felt underneath. Very interested. If Sir Michael Stout lets her take a chance, it's almost a sign in itself, to use the old cliche, so we say. So, look, I think Mother Earth, she's very solid. She'll run a race. Those in behind, I think you can, the market's suggesting it. I think there's, 7 horses separated by 2 points in the betting. I think there's a little bit of an element to throw a blanket over them. But Potapova, she's a 12-1 poke. She's not had to come off the bridle. If she does run, I'll be interested at a double-figure price.
And we move on to Saturday, where we've got the final of the Group 1 races for the week, the 8th in total, and this is the Diamond Jubilee Stakes over the straight. 6 furlongs, 1,200 metres, and Starman, who Stephen's already given a push for, 10-3, so 100-30 favourite with 888. Dream of Dreams at 5-1 with Ladbrokes. Nahar at 7-1 with William Hill. Glass Slippers at 10s with Coral. Art Power next best 12-1 with William Hill. All right, Stephen, give us the reason why Starman's the nap of the week.
Yeah, I think he's a real banker, Shane. You get 7-2. I think that's a fair price. Definitely going for the race. He's run 5 times. He's trained by a really good young trainer in Ed Walker. His only defeat came on soft ground. You can throw that away. He's won all 4 starts apart from that. Last time out at York, his first run since October, so he hadn't had a run for 7 months, but he was very, very impressive on ground that was too soft for him. It was just good to soft at York, a bit loose. They were very worried about that beforehand, but he travelled all over them quick and clear. Extremely impressive. After the race, Ed Walker said he needs proper fast ground. He's a real summer horse. Well, he's going to get that at Ascot. I think he's a class above these, and 7-2 I think is a really fair price.
Okay, Starman, big push there at around 7-2 from Stephen. Ed, what's your assessment?
Yeah, I'm coming around to Stephen's way of thinking with this race now. My big proviso for this contest, I've always flagged up, would be the ground. And I flagged up a couple of weeks ago, I said Art Power, if the rains did arrive and we got a soft ground Royal Ascot, he would be one I think will, strip a lot fitter from his run at York behind Starman last time out. And of course, has very good form at Ascot, only beaten a length in a Group 1 here and bolted up in a Royal Ascot handicap on his only ever visit to Ascot. So the track clearly plays to Art Power's strengths, but I don't think the ground's going to be, looking at the weather. And Starman, if anything, will tighten up a lot and improve fitness-wise for his run at York. And again, the ground was probably a bit dead and he's going to get fast ground. We've been talking about vulnerable favourites. I think of all of them, he's one with, how should we say, ticks a lot more boxes than others throughout the week. And I think, Starman should take a lot of beating.
All right, just a reminder that we'll be live streaming Jump to It each of the 5 days of Royal Ascot from 8 a.m. in the UK time. And looking forward to have Ed, Stephen, myself, and also Vincent Finnegan from irishracing.com, hopefully finding plenty of winners each and every day. It's now time for Tips of the Week. Well, as we reflect on last weekend, Stephen, it was a disaster, putting it bluntly. It certainly wasn't good for you, it wasn't good for me. Ed thankfully had the week off, but your overall record still remains outstanding, but unfortunately we struck out last week.
Yeah, Al Arzi was quite painful last week, Shane. That was personally quite expensive. It got to an incredible price. It went out to 7-4, which was, well, used to shout to the bailiffs through the letterbox, I've had some terrific value this week. But that was disappointing. Tiona was really disappointing in the Oaks. I think the ground went for her. And John Leaper just didn't stay, wasn't good enough. Got a dreadful ride as well, which didn't help. But onwards and upwards, it's lower grade stuff this weekend, but very competitive nonetheless.
I have supreme faith in you, Stephen, that you'll bounce back. Let's have a look. Who do you like?
Well, starting off at York in the 2 o'clock, this is one of those amateur lady riders handicaps. Nicholas T ran an absolute screamer last time in the Zetland Gold Cup. Very unlucky there. Saw no daylight, finished running left. The yard are having winners. He should be spot on fitness-wise now. He's got everything in his favour. 7 or 8-1. I think that's a very fair price. Staying at York, 305. William Haggis had Ilarab in here as well. He's taken him out. He goes to the Hardwick, I believe, at Royal Ascot next week. Instead, he runs Roberto Escobar. Now, this one was really impressive winner at York last season, which I like. I think York's a course where the form from there, if you've got winning form, it counts for plenty coming back to York. He ran at Ascot, very weak in the market. His first run of the season on soft ground, he got very tired. I think he'll be a different horse on fast ground. Back at York, I think he's around 11-2. Stepping up in trip will definitely suit him. He's a thorough stayer, a relentless galloper. I think he'll go close. And finally at York, small yard, James Ferguson in the 340, first folio. At Newmarket last time, he missed the break completely. I thought he ran really well. I think he'd have nearly won that race with a level start and more luck in running. He should go really close. He's 12-1. I think that's extremely fair as well.
All right, 3 good selections, nice prices there from Stephen. Ed, let's now switch to your thoughts for this coming weekend. Where do you want to settle on for your targets over the weekend leading into Royal Ascot?
Well, I think this is potentially the hardest Saturday for absolute donkey's years. I'm sitting out Saturday. I think it's too tough, to be honest with you. It's going to be my quietest punting weekend since about last September. So I'm over to the jumps. There's some good cards, Newton Abbott and Aintree on Friday evening. So I've got a couple that have been in my tracker, which I'm concentrating on there. And one is Getaway Trump, of course. There's a horse trained by Paul Nicholls, who in his early days he thought would make up into an Arkle horse. He's rated 155 over hurdles. Paul Nicholls says it's taken him half his training career to work out the horse just hates Cheltenham. Away from Cheltenham, he's got some very good form, as we saw when he bolted up at Doncaster back in March. He wants quick ground. He's going to get it here off a marker 149 away from Cheltenham. Harry Cobden is back in the saddle after injury, being off 6 weeks or so. He'll be absolutely fired up, raring to go for this, and I think he's a major player. And then we go to Aintree, as I touched upon. And then we got the old boy in that, the Duke of Navan, nearly as old as you, Shane. This one, but he's got some really smart form. This teenager, he's declined. It has to be said. However, his handicap mark reflects that he's now for a career low mark of 125. He loves the ground. He's a good jumper. He's got good form at Aintree. So I think he can go well. As I said, I'm sitting out the Saturday, but on Sunday, really good race at Salisbury. I hope they all stand their ground. The Cathedral Stakes listed contest, really interesting. Mum's Tipple is likely to go there and be favourite. Of course, a horse that nearly broke the track record at York a couple of years ago. But Cardem, previous Stewards Cup winner, must have quick ground. That really is the bottom line to this horse. He's not had his conditions at all. It's really funny listening to Jim Crowley saying they almost just give up. Whenever they send him to a race course, there seems to be one rain cloud in the area that just moves over him, rains, and then it's dry the rest of the day. They just have not had his conditions. He's not a Group 1 sprinter. He hates soft ground. He's enlisted level here, and he should, by all accounts, get proper good to firm ground at Salisbury. I think he's the class act to take some beating.
All right, good luck to you. And I think by next week's show, I need to find some sort of social media filter that'll make me look younger so I can stop you two picking on me. I had a blowout last week. I went all in John Leaper in the Derby, and I agree with you, Stephen. I think he was given a terrible ride. Frankie Dettori was way too far out of his ground early. He tried to make a lightning move coming downhill into the home straight, and it was just set an impossible task and brought him undone. I think he'll win a decent race, though, later in the season. However, to find a winner for this weekend, I don't like anything in the UK. I think it's pretty tough, so I'm heading back to my homeland of Australia. One of the biggest races of the year in Australia is this Stradbroke Handicap over 1,400 metres or 7 furlongs at Eagle Farm, and I'm very keen on the bottom weight in the race. It's a handicap. His name is Apache Chase, last start winner of the Fred Best, beating one of the highest regarded 3-year-olds in Australia called Ayrton. He was super brave. He's going to be on speed. He's drawn well. You're currently getting 8-1 for him. Each way bet 365, 5 units each way for me. Hopefully he'll bounce me back into good form and set me up with a decent bank going into Royal Ascot, Stephen. Of course, it's going to be a brilliant week of racing, but just give us a quick thought. Do you have a highlight at all for this weekend, or is it all about building up to Royal Ascot?
Well, I think it is looking ahead to Royal Ascot. Shane could do all the form over the weekend. We'll start to get the final fields coming through 48 hours in advance. But I am looking forward to Roberto Escobar. I've been waiting for him to step up to a mile 6. You can forget his first run of the season at Ascot. The ground was too testing for him. Haggis is absolutely flying. Everything he runs is nearly winning or running blinders. So 5.5-1. Roberto Escobar, I'm looking forward to seeing him run at York.
All right, good luck to you. And Ed, have you got anything you're looking forward to this weekend, or is it all about Royal Ascot form?
No, it's all about jumps racing on Friday night. It's about the barbecue on Saturday, and then it's England Croatia on Sunday, as we said. But yeah, no, I'll be as I said, I think the Saturday is so competitive. You're both much braver than myself if you get involved with the action at York, etc. So yeah, keep my powder generally dry. Just keep my eyes on those entries for Ascot. As I said, there's a few vulnerable favourites, I think, and I'm looking to try and get them turned over. With what yet, I don't quite know, but that's all part of the fun.
And good luck to you as well. There we have it. Stephen Harris and Ed Quigley joining me here on Jump To It. Great to get their insights. And just a reminder that we do have live streaming coming of Jump To It all next week for Royal Ascot, Tuesday through Saturday, coming in at 8 a.m. UK time with the build-up and the latest information for the big days of racing. Make sure you head to irishracing.com to get all the latest racing news, cards, form, tips, and plenty of opinions. And of course, head to bettingexpert.com. Stephen Harris has his daily tips available with his NAP, which is his best bet, and of course, a value selection. And overall, Stephen's been in fantastic form throughout this racing year. Hope you've enjoyed today's edition of Jump To It. We'll see you again next week.